The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
It's official. Cam Rising has medically retired from football.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes.
Cam Rising retiring. Being forced to medically retire. It's a massive story, one that's been in the works for a while, just in terms of his eventual retirement or something. We knew it was coming, right? I still remember, obviously we all remember just what a saga this has been, waiting to see like what's the next step for Cam Rising. But it was in November, Kyle Whittingham at the UFC press conference, he said that Cam Rising wasn't going to be available for he would announce Cam Rising when he was going to retire, and he ends up not announcing it for a while. And finally we get the news today, and I'm not the only one here who's going to be talking about it. Jake Hatch, kind enough to hop on and talk with me. A busy Utah Mammoths and everything.
Did I wander into the wrong podcast? What's going on?
For the second time I've gone live, you have. But yeah, this has just been a wild story. It's been months in the making, really. When would Cam retire? As I was trying to recap, I was also trying to add you into the studio. Kyle Whittingham says November, I'll let Cam announce. Then spring ball comes and he says, well, Cam's not on the roster. Cam wasn't involved in any of the Big 12 Media Day stuff. It's sad to see him forced to medically retire and not be able to go out on his own terms, Jake. But I did feel like this is just this sad ending to what's a great career, but just a very sad ending for the final 2 years.
Yeah, sure. Here's the deal. And I'm coming off as the guy who covers BYU. I get all that. I work in sports radio in Salt Lake City. Cam Rising was the heart and soul of that Utah football program when he was their quarterback. Everybody responded to him. You can't tell me that last season wouldn't have been significantly different for Utah had he stayed healthy for the entire year. I truly believe that. Now, I'm not even going to venture a guess at a record, but I do think they would have been better than what they finished 5-7. So I look at it as Cam. Yes, it sucks he doesn't get to go out on his own terms. It sucks that Gatorade cart took him out. It sucks that Trevor Mai took him out and shoved him out of bounds. All that sucks. But you can never take away what Cam accomplished in a Utah uniform. That is winning 2 Pac-12 titles. That is playing in 2 Rose Bowls. Yes, the injuries marred the end of his career, and it's cool to see that he's got a new gig. He'll be the offensive coordinator for his alma mater, Newberry High School, down there in Southern California. So it's cool that he's taking on a new role as a coach. But it would have been nice to see him get a chance to live out his dream potentially at the professional level. But hey, football gets taken from the best of them at any given point.
It can, and it's terrible, and you hate that he had to go out this way, but he accomplished things that will never be forgotten. His number will eventually be up there with Alex Smith's, and I have no doubts about that for what he was able to do, guiding this team to 2 Pac-12 championships. And for me as a student at Utah at the time when they won the first one, then getting to cover them for the second one, there'll just always be special memories in my heart. And Cam Rising, as you mentioned, Jake, was the heart and soul of that too. I also think he's just an incredible story of a guy who came over from Texas, had to sit out the Tyler Huntley year, and you don't know, hey, what's this guy going to do? Charlie Brewer, Baylor transfer, ends up beating him out. Jake, BYU, like you said, Locked On Cougs, we go down to BYU, we lose. It's a lost season. What's going to happen? And Cam pulls this team out of it. Kyle Whittingham, a guy who does not give out praise easily, called him one of the best leaders ever. Utah football is not in the position it is today, and you just simply can't write the story of the Utah football program without Cam Rising.
It is the end of a chapter for Utah football with him stepping aside now, because you'll always think back on that run and that fateful decision to put him in that game against San Diego State. And obviously the way that they took off after that, all those things are hallmarks of his time. And yes, he's got hardware to back it up. Those Pac-12 trophies, those championship trophies that they hoisted down there in Las Vegas. That's a really cool thing for him to be able to look back on, and Utah fans to be able to reminisce on as they think back on this era. And it would have been cool to see him maybe take the field one last time. And here's the thing. He had a great quote at Big 12 Media Days. I can't wait to go down there and whoop their ass. That's what he said about playing BYU. And there was some question if he got it confused because the game was going to be in Salt Lake City. I, for one, speaking from the BYU perspective, would have loved to have seen Cam Rising finally play in Provo, Utah, at LaVell Edwards Stadium. He was on the sideline in that game, as you mentioned, with Charlie Brewer. Didn't see the field in that game. And it would have been nice to finally see him take the field in Provo against the Cougars. And who knows, maybe they would have whooped that ass. Maybe they would.
I did not expect to get such. I hope someone clips that, by the way. Whoop that ass from Jake Hatch. But that is something that it's kind of the one thing Cam didn't get to do. Obviously, he would have been awesome to win a Big 12 title, but he didn't get to beat BYU. That's kind of crazy that the circumstances took out that way. Just the one time that he and like his 4 years, or the 2 he ended up being healthy for, that Utah, or well, they did play BYU as we mentioned, he just wasn't the guy out there. So I just hate that for him too. And I really hope, and I think most fans, and you guys are starting to pour in some comments too, we'll get to those in a little bit. I think most fans will remember Cam for what he did. It just is unfortunate that I felt like he got so much blame and so much crap as well, unfortunately and unjustly, for he wanted to be out there so bad. It was just the injuries. And then look, there's always the Utah doctors and everything too. Utah's had a lot of injuries, so I don't know I'm not trying to assign blame anywhere too, but there was obviously just a lot going on behind the scenes because there were other guys getting hurt as well too. So it was just a really icky situation. And I feel like at the time it kind of just tainted his legacy for a little bit, but now that the book is officially closed and we can just look back and say, hey, what has he accomplished? I think long-term, the farther away we get from it, the more and more will Cam Rising play will go away, and we'll remember the 2 titles.
So you're saying he's only going to be questionable on the depth chart? Is that what
Yeah.
we're here? No, here's the thing. You're right. You can finally close that chapter. And yes, there was that season long, like he's close. And it was a bunch of bluster at that point. I know that it frustrated Utah fans, and I think it created a bunch of memes for BYU fans at the same time of he's close. We think he's going to be. You know what? They should have just said, hey, when he's ready, and we will follow up at that point instead of letting it go week by week. I understand why Utah did what they did, but in retrospect, it did him and the program, the coaches, Kyle Whittingham, et cetera. It did nobody any services when it came to that. So it's unfortunate that that's the way it played out, because you're right. It did taint in some small way his legacy. But I think the vast majority of Utah fans who are privileged enough to watch Cam play for the University of Utah will look past that, and they'll think back on those Rose Bowl runs and the conference championships. That's what they'll remember most fondly, even though, the end of it was marred by the injury issues.
It's crazy how things work out. Earlier this week, I had Brian Brown on, and we were talking about just the best moments and performances of his career too, Jake. And I'm curious if you'll agree, but I feel like the only ones you can go to when it's moments and games as well is the USC game. I still remember sitting in that press box, and the one at home too. He's great in the Pac-12 championship game later that year too. But just I was sitting in that press box. You're down 14-0 in the blink of an eye. Oh, this is over. What is it like? We won one Pac-12 title, but that was, I guess people are gonna try to say it's a fluke now and everything. And then he brings his team back. The 2-point conversion, such an iconic moment and image. It feels like that will be the play and the game associated with Cam Rising. I think it's incredibly fitting.
Here's the thing. Cam Rising was a gamer. That is the best description you can use about him, because was he marvelous with his arm? No. Was he an absolute speedster? No. But when a play needed to be made on the football field, by and large, he made it for Utah when he was out there on the field. And that is a really, really cool legacy to have. He showed up in big moments. As you mentioned that USC game, I will forever remember watching that. And I'm like, they're going to pull this off. And that's exactly. He just marched them right down the field. You mentioned the 2-point conversion. Iconic moments that will obviously live on forever. And you're right. I do think at some point there's a likelihood that his number is on the facade up there at Rice Eccles Stadium. And it's well-deserved, because he accomplished a lot in his time at Utah. And you mentioned kind of the background. He's transferring from Texas. It was like, okay, let's see what we got in this kid. And ends up being one of the all-timers for Utah.
He was an all-timer, and there will be time to talk about where he ranks among the all-time Utah quarterbacks, but just an incredible career, an incredible legacy for Cam Rising. We're just getting started talking about this all, but Jake, you were kind enough to jump on. Really appreciate you, my friend. Busy day, Utah Hockey Club and everything, or Mammoth now. I love the name, by the way. I love the name.
Yeah, I do love the name. This is one of the new logos. Like I was privileged enough to be able to get
Nice.
some of the swag, and I am excited to have the NHL here, and obviously have now be officially the Utah Mammoth. But thanks for letting me stop by and reminisce a little bit.
I like that hat better than the one you normally have on, by the way. So appreciate you hopping on, my friend. Thanks again, Jake.
Right here. Hey.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Still got it on. See, I can't cut that in post because we're live. Ugh.
I wore that for you just to
Thank you.
Retzloff shirt. By the way, shout out to Royal Army, not Royal Army. Shout out to the Royal Blue Collective for that shirt.
Now I really wish I could cut that. Jake, thanks again. You're the best, man. Appreciate you.
See you guys.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The Houston Cougars just made a big splash by making a big-time offer to a top 3 player.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars.
Houston made a big-time splash in the class of 2026 in terms of basketball recruiting by offering Christian Collins. Christian Collins is 6'8", 6'9", depending on what you're looking at. Long-armed perimeter player, goes to St. John's Bosco in California. Number 1 forward in the nation. 5-star kid, presently has offers from Kentucky, Duke, and Houston. Also has visits with Texas and Alabama scheduled for the summer. It looks like Houston may get in on that train as well. Christian Collins is like I said, a California kid. His dad and aunt were both McDonald's All-Americans in the same year. That's D'Angelo Collins and Alexis Kendricks, both McDonald's All-Americans in 2003, I believe, which makes me feel a little bit old, but really big-time player here. He's 6'8", 6'9"-ish, long arms, long wingspan, and he's been working on the perimeter aspects of his game. Works with high-end, high-level guard skill trainers in California, and I think that kind of has a almost negative connotation for a guy that size, but then you put on the game tape for Christian Collins, and he does the physical back you down kind of stuff when he gets smaller guys on him. He has the perimeter game. He can shoot. He can run. He's really athletic as far as being able to take off from a long way away and punch the ball home. Really, really impressive kid. And I think what makes him feel like a Houston Cougar is that he's got this massive rise in the last 6 months. He was unranked the summer going into his junior season. He's presently, as we mentioned at the top, a top 3 player in the class of 2026 going into the summer before his senior season. That's 1 high school season worth of games, and he moved up from unranked to a consensus 5-star. No one has him outside of their top 5 in the class of 2026, right? Fun facts here. He's a childhood actor, did some commercial kind of work and that kind of stuff. Coaches describe him as a guy that kind of lights up the room. He's a happy kid, great smile, very, outspoken, and like he's just kind of a fun energy to be around. But man, when you watch him on the basketball court, it is energy. I don't think guarding him looks very fun. He's really, really impressive. Again, puts his back to the basket on smaller defenders, faces up out on the three-point line with bigger ones. I don't know how you cover this kid one-on-one. His massive rise feels entirely like notoriety. Like he went to a smaller high school before St. John's Bosco. The bigger program gave him more limelight. Suddenly, he's a consensus top player, right? And that feels a lot like Chris Sinak. Chris Sinak, the 2025 5-star center / power forward coming to Houston, had a very similar deal from Louisiana. He was not the highest ranked guy early on in his high school career and finished it out pretty highly ranked, obviously. Feels similar to me in that way. Very traditional Houston story. I feel like you find a lot of these guys that Houston finds that are, end up being discovered later, but Houston's in on them early. It sounds like Houston and Christian Collins had been in contact as this rise and before this rise was necessarily happening, but the offer came on Wednesday, May 7th officially. Now, he's the kind of kid that will probably take as long as he can to commit. He's going to get a bunch of offers. He's going to command large NIL checks and all of that, but he's got some things to his game, the long wingspan, the wanted to dunk a lot of things, the versatility, and just this like grinded out gym rat attitude about basketball that make me feel like he's very Houston Cougarish, especially when you're looking at like Houston will probably have, I think at least one of the freshmen coming in will be a one and done, need to replace them on that high end recruits. And as we're kind of seeing Houston move slightly into that game, getting the toes wet in that kind of basketball, the way you replace those guys is by bringing in another one, right? And so big time offer here. We'll see what the commitment is like. We'll be tracking it as we go. In the class of 2026, I've been hearing that Junior County, so Houston's getting in the 2025 class, has signed Isaiah Harwell for next season, a consensus top 15 player. Some people have the number one shooting guard in the class. Right. The other perimeter scorer on that Wasatch Academy team is Junior County. He's not as big as Isaiah, but does put up a lot of the same kind of stats. Big time scorer, shooter, finisher on the rim. Junior County's dad was a college defensive back at the University of Utah. He plays for Utah Prospects. He goes to Wasatch Academy. He's a Utah guy, statewide through and through. But I'm hearing Houston's making some good inroads and getting connected with the county kid. I'm not going to lie to you. I think Isaiah Harwell coming to Houston helps that a lot. The two had great chemistry. When you watch video, frankly, as I'm watching video for Isaiah Harwell to see what he's going to look like in a Houston Cougar uniform, you can't avoid seeing Junior County unfold at the same time. For my money, I do think Isaiah Harwell is better, but that doesn't mean it's any big knock on Junior County. He's a tremendous scorer of basketball. And frankly, I want to see the ball in his hands more as a senior next year without Isaiah around. You can see a similar kind of rise that we keep talking about Houston Cougar guys get as he has the ball in his hands more, right? And so got to keep an eye on there. Again, I'm hearing his name a lot inside of things. Still sounds like they're doing pretty well with recruiting Caleb Holt, another consensus top 5 guy. Top 10 I think the lowest I've seen him ranked the 7th on one board in the 2026 class. Caleb Holt's the Alabama kid that was initially going to come visit Houston in person, but then Samson went and visited him at his high school. Sounds like they do have a visit scheduled for him to come through Houston. Holt has also already been to campus once back during his sophomore year. Big time athlete out of that too. Another 6'5" perimeter guy. Houston's looking to get bigger and better, man. The other big offer on the table is actually 2027 on Wednesday. Houston offered David. I'm going to try my best with his last name because I hadn't heard it pronounced the same way twice in a row. Bellarraine. David Bellarraine is from Hallsville, Texas, which is a small town between Longview and Marshall. That's that small town thing I said we'd open with at the start. I'm looking for a full game video of Hallsville. It's not a very big program, certainly not as big as Longview or anything like that. But the clips you watch this guy play at, I mean, he's making tremendous freak athletic plays. Listed at 6'8", he looks bigger than that to me. That could be a discrepancy in the guys he's playing against, I guess, but looks really, really big. He's the kind of guy that's going to be in Hallsville maybe his junior season as well, depending how his AAU summer goes. He'll probably end up at a bigger program somewhere his senior year of high school, just because those big programs aren't going to let a talent like that sit in Hallsville, Texas, right? And that's no knock on Hallsville, Texas. That's not my small town, but I love small town Texas across a lot of different parts of the state. But I do feel like he's going to end up in some city, whether that's somehow manages to find his way moved into Duncanville and DFW, or they come down and they play at like, I don't know, one of the high-end private schools in Houston that puts out good basketball players or whatever, or the Baylor Episcopal kind of things, or whatever the case may be. I just feel like Bellarraine is going to end up somewhere like that. I could also see him at the academies, the Lynx, Link Academy, Wasatch, something like that, just to get his game more on display. But Houston is in early on at that one. 2027 means he's wrapping up his sophomore year of high school as we talk to you right now. The clips again look like he's more than just an unranked 2027 kid. Admittedly, there aren't as many ranked 2027 kids. I think the rankings go through mostly 75. No one has gone a whole lot deeper than that. But it does feel like Houston may be getting in on the boat early there. And basketball recruiting is fun, man. Once you've built this program, kids want to be a part of it, and it's fun to see the ball rolling. Can't not give credit to, double negative there. Got to give credit to Landon Gosling and the NIL work that basketball is doing to stay at a level that is nationally competitive. Obviously, it helps that this program was being established before NIL became a real deal. But having all of that resource there, it's not that they're necessarily giving every 5-star kid the exact same dollar amount that they're going to get at the previous blue blood iteration or generation of college basketball, but they're able to keep competitive enough that the other benefits of Houston outweigh the difference, right? And that's what you're seeing across the board here when kids are interested in Houston, excited about Houston offers and stuff like that. It's just a whole different ball game than it used to be.
Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, you'll have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. And you can create cost-effective growth for your company instead of hiring full-time. Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
Notre Dame's recruiting momentum is off the charts right now.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Notre Dame landed verbal commitments from 4-star running back Javian Osborne and 4-star linebacker Jacoby Clapper in the class of 2026. Big picture, what impact do these commitments have on the class as a whole?
Yeah, let's start with Osborne. Obviously, there's been a lot made about Coach Sider and then kind of his splashes on the scene since he took over here at Notre Dame. And Osborne is just kind of like the proof of concept of that, right? This is a guy who not 2 months ago, I went on an Irish Illustrated Insider podcast with my full chest. He was like, yeah, he's going to Michigan. We don't need to really worry about him. And like 2 weeks later, he was at Notre Dame and I called him and he was like, yeah, they're pretty much at the top of my list.
Hey,
like,
you certainly weren't the only one who said that. That was
Exactly.
The general consensus there for a while.
Exactly. And look, it's fun to laugh at now because it's good work, right? Like this is when it's fun to be wrong. It's just a good process. So he is an excellent running back prospect, really great, movement in the open field. He's a big play hitter. He's not necessarily like the Tim Priester noted this in his film review. He's not the burner that like Jadarian Price is, although I do kind of compare him to Price stylistically the way he runs, especially after the first 5 yards. But he is just so good at making guys miss, running through tackles, creating missed tackles. Like he's just a big play waiting to happen from the backfield. He's also a good receiver. He's a little bit of a low volume receiver in high school, which always draws the question, like, is he not being asked to do it because they just do other things? Is he not being asked to do it because he's really not, consistent catching the ball? It's hard to tell from the outside, but when he gets the ball, he's an explosive play threat as a receiving back, especially on screens. So there's quite a bit to like about what Osborne brings as the first commitment of the Sider era. And then looking at Jacoby Clapper, he's a player. There's been a little bit of question about where he actually falls measurement-wise, height and weight. I was told by someone close to him pretty definitively that he's at about 215 right now. I think he played closer to 200 during the season. But looking at Clapper, he's a good athlete at the linebacker position. He can run sideline to sideline. There are times where when he hits someone, like you can feel it as an audience member. He's a really versatile linebacker. I think the biggest thing about Clapper is he's not necessarily like, oh, he's an elite X, Y, or Z, right? He's just a very complete football player, probably a plus athlete overall for the position when you're looking at, just the overall scale of linebackers that were available. And if you're looking at the class as, they're trying to add Thomas Davis Jr., Tank King, and Jacoby Clapper as a 3. If this was a 2-man linebacker class, I think Clapper as a second would be like, yeah, it's pretty good. But if you're looking at it as like a 3-man linebacker class, I think that's a pretty solid addition there to round out the trio.
Okay, so I have a couple follow-ups there. Let's start with Osborne because he is the first running back commitment in the class, the first under new running back coach Jawan Sider. And last night, or I guess by the time this is out 2 nights ago, there was a lot of smoke on Twitter, on message boards, that Jonas Walton, a running back, could be committing to Notre Dame here in the near future. Do you think that's going to be the case? And is there any chance that Notre Dame could take 3 running backs in this class?
Yeah, with Walton, I definitely think that things have been trending to Notre Dame kind of being the pick for a while. We've talked about on Irish Illustrated, the confidence that's coming out of South Bend has been consistently strong. And then my colleague, Tom Loy, who obviously is a national writer, gets a little bit more of the sense of some of the other beats. he's talked consistently about how it's just different at Notre Dame than some of these other schools. It's confidence versus optimism, right? So when you're looking at that, I do think that Notre Dame's in a good spot for Walton. On the actual timeline of that, I still have to make some phone calls and verify. I think things could be moved up, especially now that Osborne is in the class. However, I'm not 100% certain that Walton is ultimately going to pull the trigger before July, his originally sort of intended timeline. Even in conversations last week with, I think, Brett Greenberg, or maybe it was even over the weekend, who covers Alabama, he mentioned that he's still looking at July. So unless something has changed between like Friday and now, we're probably still looking at a little bit longer. But this could be a situation too where, there's something communicated to staff, hey, you're in a good spot, you're the leader, whatever else. There's a million and one things it could be. And then a note on that, kind of looking at the overall picture of running backs, the staff also visited Evan Walker, the 4-star out of Missouri that they're after. I guess when this comes out, it'll be 3 days ago. So there's a few options that could have been for that excitement. Obviously, the Walton stuff is kind of where all the smoke is, but there is some potential options here, especially if you're looking at this from the perspective of, guys are trying to get in the class, right? Secure their spot. On the topic of 3, I had been told that 3 was an option, especially given some concerns in the portal that we heard about. Obviously, those things did not come to pass. So my thought at the time was, all right, well, they're probably just still looking at 2. I've heard since then that 3 is still possible. It did not sound like it was the outright like, oh, this is going to happen or this is most likely or anything like that. But once again, it's just being floated out by people in the know as this is something that we are considering and looking at, given the talent on the board and given the fact that the overwhelming likelihood is at least 2 of those guys are gone by 2026 in the current room. So I think it's possible. Do I think it's going to happen? A little wishy-washy, but it's distinctly possible.
It's interesting that they're open to that because it's kind of shocking how much talent is in the room currently. And like you said, more likely than not, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are gone after the season because those are 2 NFL backs, and maybe they lose one more. So if that were to happen, then taking 3 in this class makes sense. But you also need to get 3 running backs to want to be a part of the same class. And I think taking 2 is pretty standard. 3 is a little bit much, especially when you consider the targets that Notre Dame is going after, because there's Osborne already in the fold, Walton potentially, Walker, and even Brian Bonner has been in the mix for a while as well. Those are 4, or at least 3 top 150 players, and then Walker, who's a little bit outside. But clearly, a lot is going right in that Notre Dame running back room, and it looks like that's going to continue. But flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, 4-star defensive tackle Tiki Hola is set to announce his decision this Saturday. He's choosing between Notre Dame, SMU, and USC, but it looks like it's a 2-team race at this point. Ultimately, what do you think is going to tip the scales for him, and how likely is Notre Dame to land him?
Yeah, my crystal ball has been on Notre Dame to land Hola. I definitely feel a little bit more pressed about that here this week in the closing stages, especially since he took an official visit to SMU last weekend. What I'm hearing right now is that it does seem like things are trending towards SMU kind of down the stretch here coming out of that official visit, but there is kind of a caveat to that. Obviously, both schools are engaging down the stretch here. And Notre Dame will be, and I need to verify the dates on this because I have not been able to get like, oh, it's happening Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. This week, Notre Dame is going to send a contingent down to Texas to visit with Hola. At least 2 people, Al Washington and Nick Sebastian, will be on that trip confirmed. I would strongly suspect there's going to be a larger contingent than that. So they're making a push here late. Some of the big factors in this one, obviously, being from Texas, the local quote unquote school is more important. He's not like around the corner from SMU, but he's close enough that it's closer than Notre Dame. And then you look at sort of some of the other background factors. I know Hola has talked about the importance of relationships in this process. He has great relationships with both staffs. He's talked about development, personal and professional, basically football, non-football. And something that's been publicly emphasized by both staffs is their Polynesian connections with the pipeline of players from that community to their schools. I know not only does SMU have a strong lineage there, but they also have a few staffers who are Polynesian. They hired a guy, and I can't remember his name. I saw the report probably about a month ago, who's been known. He works in Texas, Polynesian guy, heavily recruits that community for schools in Texas historically. And it sounds like he's been pretty big boon for SMU's, approach here with Hola here in the last month. On the flip side of that, obviously Notre Dame has Myron Tagovailoa-Amosa. He put out that Polynesian pipeline tweet the other night. There's really no question who that was directed at.
Might as well have tagged him.
Exactly. So when you look at that, like obviously that is something that has come up in the conversations if they're publicly organizing around it, selling against it. So that's something where, Notre Dame, even with the established lineage and pipeline, I think there's, for a lot of the prospects, especially who are not maybe as aware of like, oh, I remember watching X, Y, and Z play at Notre Dame. There's probably a little bit more involved sell there because like just getting, communities of people who are typically around the coasts to come to the middle of Indiana is just a little bit of a tougher sell. So I think for Notre Dame, they have every chance to lock this thing down. They had the momentum probably until middle of last week, I would say, when the official visit stuff was like, okay, he's going. Like, let's see what this looks like. I'm not going to change the crystal ball. I've decided we're going to let it ride. Going to be right or wrong because it was shoot your shot. But I also just think that the likelihood that we get anything concrete that's not like spoiling the kid's announcement coming out of that meeting with Notre Dame is going to be pretty low. So just kind of looking at it here, you're not going to see any changes from me on the crystal ball side, but I do think Notre Dame has work to do to make that come true.